All right. Well, it is officially our start time. Welcome, everyone, to the session, Enhance Your Marketing Cloud IER Data. I'd like to welcome your presenter, Kaczmarzyk, to this session to present for you. I've really enjoyed getting to know her on this path as she's been preparing her materials to share with you. There's some really good stuff. Kara, could you take a moment and introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the presentation. And thanks, Florence. I enjoyed getting to know you as well. And you also nailed my name, which is a very rare thing. I have been with the University of Arizona for about 6 years working on their CRM implementation. Really started on the marketing cloud side. Now I'm an architect on the team. And really, my whole kind of background has been in CRM implementations. So I love CRMs.
Oh, that's great. You know, there was something that Kara shared with me as we were prepping for this session, and just outside her window, she has something special that she likes to look at. Can you share it with the group?
Sure. Well, I'm fortunate to be out here in the Sonoran Desert. So, out my work window, I'll look out on saguaros that are probably older than my university, like the University of Arizona, which is pretty amazing because U of A has been around for like over 140 years. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, you'll have to send over a picture of that. I have not seen one in person.
Ooh. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start your session.
All right. So, here's my little card about me. I already talked a little bit about myself. We also see on the screen here. Well, actually, let me take a step back. So, Florence already kind of introduced the presentation, but essentially, we're here to talk about Marketing Cloud and IER data. So, those individual email results that get created anytime you send an email from Marketing Cloud. So this is going to be, as the description shows, kind of a how to. So, first, we'll talk a little bit about the problem statement, and then I do have quite a few slides that really are going to get into the kind of nitty gritty of how you might set something like this up yourself in your org. All right, so now we can get to the this slide here. So essentially, the University of Arizona CRM implementation has been going for about 6 years. I did want to specifically call out some of those numbers down there. So in our org, we have almost 2,000 active Salesforce users, which is a lot across the university. And then we have about 450 Marketing Cloud users. So, also a lot of users, but certainly not as many as all the different types of users who use Salesforce. But those 450 users are really active because they're sending about 750 emails a month to so many constituents. That's like 3.5 million sends a month. So, pretty impressive. So, enough about that. Now, let's just get into the agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. So, essentially, going to kind of go over four things. So, first, I want to get into a little bit more of the U of A's marketing cloud and Salesforce org kind of configuration, because as anyone knows, there are so many different ways you can connect marketing cloud with Salesforce or with multiple orgs, etc. So, I thought that would be a kind of a helpful kind of level set. And then I'll talk about what were some of the problems that our users were facing with kind of the out of the box connection between Salesforce and Marketing Cloud, and some things that, seem kind of simple, but can really help kind of bolster that IER data. And you can already hear me saying IERs a lot. I do want to put a disclaimer. I'll be using a lot of Marketing Cloud jargon during this presentation. Then, once we kind of go over that example of the problem and the solution, then we'll essentially move into a how to part of the talk. So this part is going to be really step by step. There'll be a lot of screenshots, a lot of details in there. But my goal with this is, if you're interested in implementing something like we're going to talk about, you should have the information, from this slide deck and some linked resources where you can actually take that back and implement it with your org. So I personally always love sessions where it's like I take something away that I can just turn around and put to use. So that was kind of my goal with this. And then, of course, I'll kind of wrap it up with some considerations that you might want to think about if you were to put this in place in your org and some lessons learned. All right. So with that, our Marketing Cloud org, as I mentioned, was set up kind of in parallel with our Salesforce org. And so very early on, we made the decision that any subscriber in Marketing Cloud, so anyone who's being sent an email, must also live in Salesforce. And so we have, for example, our Salesforce contact ID is what we're using as our Marketing Cloud subscriber key. And that kind of architectural decision helps really to make the marketing cloud or kind of as clean as possible, at least for an email marketing platform. Um, and then it also lets us, be pretty intentional with the formatting of the data that's in Marketing Cloud and kind of what fields are being sent from Salesforce into Marketing Cloud. So, for the University of Arizona, we're really focused on current students and employees, and we're kind of branching out to community members, external partners, and we're syncing that data from Salesforce into Marketing Cloud. Some other things about our org, we also kind of recently rolled out distributed marketing, and we have some other kind of setup in Salesforce where even if you don't have a Marketing Cloud license, you're sending an email from Salesforce that's kind of powered behind the scenes from Marketing Cloud. And then for all those sends that are going out, since we do use that Marketing Cloud Connect package, anytime an email is sent from Marketing Cloud, that'll generate an IER in Salesforce, which is again that record of an email sent to a person. And we open those up. So, as part of that 360 view of a contact in Salesforce, we give essentially all of our Salesforce users access to view those IERs, really as just part of the history of communications and interactions with a contact as a CRM should be. There's one asterisk around that. We have one kind of private business unit, but for the most part, that's kind of an important consideration for what we'll be looking at. The last kind of about our org thing that I wanted to point out is that we're also, as I said, using the Marketing Cloud Connect package to sync data between the systems. And so, what that package out of the box does is, when an email is sent from Marketing Cloud, it'll create an IER in Salesforce and then it'll update that with like open date, how many times was an email opened, etc. So, it's pretty powerful, but we also have no control over it, or very little control over it, and it kind of leaves some things to be wanted. So, as we'll see next, essentially, our kind of problem that we were hearing from our users, and these are Salesforce users, so advisors, student success professionals, they're turning to Salesforce and pulling up, like, let's say, a student's contact record, and they're wanting to see, this student comes and asks me about an email, but I don't even know what that email was. They're sent a really important email. I feel like I should be informed about what the contents of that email is, and I just can't see it. We also had other examples like, people are sending from kind of all different departments across campus. I want to make sure that I'm not sending emails that somebody maybe already received. And so the out of the box org was kind of leaving that lacking a little bit. So let's take a look at what we mean, right? students are being sent important emails. So here's just an example of an email. This is sent from Marketing Cloud. It's sent to our student, Wilma Wildcat, stuff about university compliance. So obviously that seems pretty important. And with this email being sent from Marketing Cloud, that means, right, it does create an IER in Salesforce. But thinking back to what our users were saying, maybe they're about to meet with Wilma, they try to go pull that up in Salesforce, and this is what they see. So, not really very helpful. So, in Salesforce, the IERs, you might be familiar with this as well. Either you're seeing this kind of super blurry thumbnail of an email, and, let's say you're using AMP script or personalization strings in your emails. Like, you literally can't tell what this says, you can't even read it. And this thumbnail is only if you're one of those kind of lucky subset of users who are connected between Salesforce and Marketing Cloud, which, as we think about, that's most users probably in your org are not. So for those people, they're seeing something even worse. They're just seeing like you don't even have access to see the contents of that email. So we thought, how can we fix this? So our solution is basically to try to take the body of that email and put it on the IER, which seems like it makes sense, right? Obviously. But that wasn't out of the box. So that's what we wanted to do. And the solution, that's involved in this also kind of opens the box for a lot more opportunities because we're essentially going to be making a connection between that Marketing Cloud email and that IER record in Salesforce. And we can do things like if that email was related to a specific campaign in Salesforce or any other feature or product of Salesforce, we can start kind of connecting those together. So then we can really unlock things like that Marketing Cloud excels with, like open rates, click through rates, and really connect those to those other Salesforce objects, which essentially just supports the whole, connected CRM. And the more people, the more features you use, the more strong the CRM can be. So, thinking about this being our solution, let's take another look at that same email. So, what we realized when we were kind of looking into this was every email sent from Marketing Cloud is going to have this header. So, this view as a web page link. And that's just an out of the box part of Marketing Cloud. Now, your email headers might look a little bit different. The text, whatever, you can personalize that. But essentially, behind the scenes in Marketing Cloud, this header link is what is called in Marketing Cloud a personalization string. So we realized like we could actually capture that and then push it back into Salesforce. So we did that. So now, when that same advisor or student success professional goes into Salesforce and they pull up the same IER, now what they're seeing is, they can see it's an important email based on like the name, the subject, but now they have this view email link. So this is a custom field that we created and we're starting to populate that. So now that advisor, etc., can easily click into any email in Salesforce. They'll click that link and then they can pull up the entire contents of the email so they can actually read through it. And this has been pretty helpful for people. Now, my screenshot here is just kind of obscuring some of the text for the purposes of the screenshot, but the actual link is the entire email. So once we added that view email URL, we also, again, wanted to make it as easy to access as possible. So, still in Salesforce, you're on Wilma Wildcat's contact record. You pull up their individual email results, and we also just put it in the related list. So, again, it's really easy to click and open up any email that you want to kind of see to be informed of what your constituents are receiving. And again, this kind of strategy that we'll be walking through how to set up also lets us connect IERs to other information in Salesforce. So essentially, what we're seeing here is another example of an IER in Salesforce. And this one was sent related to a campaign. So this is an example of college sending a distributed marketing email from Salesforce at the campaign level. So now we can see, that IER sent to that student is connected to a campaign. Now, we also have other features that we're connecting IERs to, such as events. So imagine, for example, um, event invitation emails. Those are being sent from Salesforce. Now we can start connecting those and kind of looping the connection between IERs and those other records. And you could imagine any other object in your org that you could connect. All right. So using that example of putting the related records on your IERs, let me just take a step back. So, right, we have our campaign field on the IER. Now that means at the campaign level, we can start to do reporting. So, for example, this priority registration email, we can start to see how that email performed related to that campaign. And if we're thinking about, campaign sends across a college, for example, and parent child campaigns, now we get that same sort of click and open rate across a lot of campaigns. So again, we're having that aggregation available directly in Salesforce, and you don't need to be in Marketing Cloud for it. Another example is related to events, right? So, event organizers, they're sending out invitation emails, reminder to register emails. Those are linked back, those IERs are linked back to the events. So now they can start to see, like, oh, maybe I can adjust the time that I send out my reminder to register because I get more opens and more clicks, at a certain day or a certain time, or this type of email performs better than another one. So, those are just some examples of some of the ways that you can really build out the Salesforce side of your reporting connected to specific specific Salesforce features. All right. So now that we kind of see what the solution is, what we put in place, some examples of that, now I want to kind of move into the side of the presentation where we're looking at how we did this. And the how is essentially two major pieces. So it starts with configuring a send log in Marketing Cloud. And the send log is, if people aren't familiar with it, and we'll get into a little bit more, but the send log essentially is this data extension in Marketing Cloud that just automatically starts capturing any additional information that is included in a send. So if you have a field in your sending data extension, if you have a field in the body of your email, it can start capturing that, like one row per person per send, and just like automatically capture all this additional metadata around a send. So it's super powerful. And so once we start capturing that extra data, then we're going to use some out of the box features of Marketing Cloud to push that back into Salesforce. So we'll use an automation in Marketing Cloud, and we'll use a journey to make that happen. So now let's see how to set this up. But before we do, wanted to just kind of get a poll from the group about that really important feature, send log.
So we just posted a poll in the chat. If we could get all of you to vote on that. guess we'll give everyone just a minute to post. All right. And here are your responses. So, Car, you have a good sized group here, more than almost 60% with no experience doing this. And then you have a handful in here that definitely can help us out in the chat. So definitely encouraging you all to help chime in if you have ideas and ways to help those that are learning about this for the first time.
Yeah, and if we have time at the end, I'd love to hear any other use cases for send logs because hopefully, as we'll see, they're super powerful. All right. So before we jump into getting the send log set up, essentially, I just wanted to recap the process that we're going to be talking about. So an email is sent from Marketing Cloud. This new send log that you set up will start capturing that view email link automatically and any extra info that you want to capture for your org and for your sends. Then automatically, an IER gets created after that email was sent. And then what we'll be also putting in place is that automation that takes any of the stuff you're now going to start to capture in your send log and sets it up on the IER. All right. And I do want to again just say a warning of like it's a lot of steps to set up, but once you set this up, if you do want to, it's pretty hands off. So it's a little bit of initial setup, but then it should be pretty good to run. You know, we've had this going for a couple of years at least now. Okay. So as I mentioned, your first step is to create a send log. And a send log is essentially just a data extension in Marketing Cloud, but it's kind of follows a very specific format where these are just the steps to create you create a new one and you create it from a send log template. And then it'll be pretty important, essentially, since this send log captures emails sent across your org, you want to place this send log data extension in a folder that every business unit has access to. So, for example, in our org, we have about 40 business units. Certainly, I know varies from, university to university or higher ed org. But essentially, that just, as some of you may know, like the actual folder that you put something in Marketing Cloud really has functionality impacts. So you want to make sure you place it in a shared space so it captures every single send. You'll want to add that view email URL field to the sendlog data extension, as well as any other custom fields that would be specific to your org of, again, fields that either are on your sending data extensions or a variable in the email that you're sending. And so here's just a couple screenshots of our send log again, just to have some visuals for maybe kind of a takeaway reference. Essentially, there are the out of the box fields that are included when you set up your send log, and you have no control over these. But then I just wanted to put some examples of these are the additional fields that UA has set up for our send log. And of course, this view email URL is the really critical one. And you can even see kind of like the exact spelling and format of this needs to match that kind of out of the box format that Marketing Cloud has, because really the send log captures things that are an exact match. So the field must exactly match. Okay, and just to continue kind of the screenshot examples, I was mentioning a sendlog is a data extension. As we can see here, anybody who's familiar with data extensions, this looks just like any other data extension, but it does have that kind of special behind the scenes functionality. All right. So again, like anytime an email is sent from Marketing Cloud, a new row would just be added to this data extension automatically for every person who has sent the email and any matching fields that are included in your send. All right, so that is the send log setup step. Now we'll switch over to the Salesforce side, put in a few fields and kind of populate those there. So, since as I've been mentioning, there is no out of the box, view email link. So, you're going to want to create that on your IER object, which is what we have here. You'll also want to create an upsert key. And that's really the critical thing that lets you, as like a, Salesforce Marketing Cloud admin, essentially take what's in Marketing Cloud, SendLog, and match that to what is on your IER, because without this, you really don't have a way to match like what's what. And then you'll also want to add any other custom fields, for example, lookups to other objects that you want to start capturing. Okay. So, and then to set this new upsert key, which is an external ID, you can simply do that in a flow. So again, I'm just including as much detail on this slide deck as possible to hopefully be a takeaway reference for you. So once you've done that Salesforce side of the setup, you'll go back into Marketing Cloud, set up a few more things, and then it'll be ready to run. So in the Marketing Cloud side, we're essentially going to create a couple of SQL queries, create a couple data extensions, schedule those out in an automation that kicks off a journey to update Salesforce. Now, I do have links to sample queries at the end of this slideshow, so you can always, use those as a starting point if you'd like. So these next slides just talk about this in a little bit more detail. So essentially you'll be setting up two more data extensions, using those queries to kind of take what's in the send log, transform it into a format that you need, that then you'll use to essentially schedule that out in a journey. So here's your data extensions. Again, I have examples in that takeaway file. You'll pop those into an automation, which is just, using more Marketing Cloud features. The automation will schedule those queries to run and then kick off a journey. Our automation we can see is running literally every hour of every day. So every hour, it's just looking at any new sends that we want to update. So this automation will kick off a journey. And here again, in the concept of like having some takeaway slides to refer to, this is what our journey looks like. So the idea here is essentially we're taking that data and we're using a journey to actually update Salesforce. So I wanted to kind of pause and just kind of highlight a couple things about this. So even, for example, there was a presentation earlier today in higher ed dreaming about like using a journey, like scheduling out your first journey. And I think a lot of times people think about journeys as a way to, you know, build a multi step email campaign or a multi touch text message campaign, right? But journeys are actually also really helpful just simply to update Salesforce data. So what we're seeing here, like this journey is not sending any emails, it's not sending any texts. It's really only used to actually update Salesforce data. So, for example, this blue kind of square here, I also wanted to kind of focus on a little bit. This is what is called an object activity. And essentially, what it does is Marketing Cloud lets you choose any Salesforce object and update it. And that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll click in here and let's just take a little peek into this, which again is kind of the last step in our setup process. So this object activity essentially is saying choose your Salesforce object, which for us is the IERs. We're going to find a match and update it. We're going to find a match between Salesforce field and Marketing Cloud field that we specify here. So again, that's that upsert key and why that is so important. And then we've actually just specified like these are the actual fields in Salesforce that we want this journey to update. All right, so lots of kind of steps to get that set up, but now it's built and running. So now Salesforce users can see that email body and they can also see those clicks and opens. So now, that kind of circling back on the user impact, now Salesforce users are empowered to pull up like the contents of emails sent to their constituents. They're also empowered to really kind of dig into the metrics related to the features that they're using. All right. So the last thing to point out is just I mentioned some considerations. So, since we've had this going for a couple of years, we've kind of noticed a few things that if you're going to put something like this in place, you'll want to think about, which emails are actually more confidential, right? So, are there any emails that maybe you don't want people to be able to see those links? And it'd be very easy in either your queries or your journey steps to kind of exclude those from adding the link. We also have some gotchas that I think we've done a pretty good job of mitigating, but it's so much data, right? Like 3.5 million sends, like I mentioned from the U of A. So it's a lot of stuff to process, and pretty much like any Salesforce or Marketing Cloud automation, you have timeout risks that we do our best to mitigate. And then just, yeah, some other kind of interesting gotchas that, again, we've tried to mitigate with the way we've set this up. And then another thing to kind of call out is, in order to set this up, we're touching Salesforce, we're touching Marketing Cloud, we're also dealing with SQL queries. So if you did want to put this in place for your org, you might want one or more people who have kind of all of these skills, at least across the entire project. All right, so those were our considerations. As I mentioned, their kind of last slide here is just a link to those sample SQL queries, which again would hopefully get you ready to go. And we have some other little AMP script code that could be helpful for you as well. So just wanted to make it easy if anybody wanted to kind of implement this for your own org. All right. So that was everything. I think now we can, how's it going in the chat?
You have lots of questions here in the chat. So we can go ahead and stop the share and we can go ahead and go through those. We have about 10 minutes left in this session, maybe a few minutes extra. And you should definitely start thinking about where you would move to next after we finish the Q&As here. So the first question that we have, and I'm ranking them by upvote. So to those of you that are here in the session, I certainly encourage you to upvote the questions. The first one I have here is from Sue. Excuse me, and she says, using the Salesforce contact ID as the subscriber key, you are limited to send out communications to their preferred email. I may have just lost Kara. We have to get her back in here. Just give her a second to come back in. And thank you all for all of the sharing that you have in the chat. If you'd like to share some love for Kara while we're waiting for her, definitely encourage you to do that. All right. Let's see if we can get Kara to come back in. Oh, here she comes. There we go. I know it's that red button. I tell you, it's a dangerous one. It's in the wrong place, I have to say. All right, so Kara, we're going to go ahead and jump into this question from Sue. Using the Salesforce contact ID as a subscriber key, you are limited to send out communications to their preferred email address. What if a department wants to use a different email address, such as work email, such as our corporate relations team? How do you handle that?
Sure. So what we do is we include the email in every sending data extension. So we do have that exact, well, a similar scenario. So essentially, as long as there is an email address in your data extension, that will override kind of like that subscriber level email. So you should have some flexibility there.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mark that one answered, and we'll go ahead and move to the next one here, which is from Jessica. And she asks if the email link contains the personalization of the original email.
It does, which is super helpful because then you can actually see any of that personalized content.
All right. Go ahead and mark that one. We're moving through these quickly. There's quite a few. The next question we have is from Darren. Do you have a solution to display AMP script blocks in the IER? We don't get much use out of the IERs because dynamic blocks only show AMP script and not the actual text that displays.
So, from our experiences, this view email link will resolve any of that AMP script. So that was like another reason that we found it very valuable because this view email link is the exact same version as each subscriber gets in their exact email.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that one. All right. So we have a question here from Evan. And I'm going to go ahead and pop it up here. We do something very similar. He said he's noticed that the personalization strings actually load null if the data extension is cleared out. We only keep data extensions for 14 days. Have you figured out a way around it?
I have not encountered that. We do like overwrite most of our data extensions, like even on a daily basis. But that's interesting. Yeah, definitely want to look into that more.
That might be one to loop back around on. Thank you. All right. We have another question from Darren, who's asking, does this strategy help with the data usage issue that can occur with IER records?
That's a tough one. So right now, the university's data retention for IERs, because just if this is what you're referring to, like there are so many records, right? But we do have just like a rolling 13-month kind of deletion of IERs, which are then stored in our data warehouse for the university. So I can't see how this would necessarily relate to that, but maybe.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. That's always a tough one is the data storage. You want to see it, but it takes up space. All right. We have a question here from Stephanie. How do you find the IER in your org? From a report or is it from a person object, for example?
So we're not using the person object, but it would be very similar to like we're just using like contacts. And we could be using leads for this as well, but essentially, yeah, we have the related lists on the contact. But we do have certainly reports so people can run kind of IER reporting across multiple sends. And that's even one of those screenshot examples of, campaign reports with IERs we're doing that way.
Okay. All right. And we have one more here. This one is from Brenna. Let's go ahead and post it. Do you have an issue with a delay in IERs being created in time for the SendLog update journey being run?
I love that question because that was something that we did find like your settings, like Marketing Cloud says, like you can have IERs created on an hourly basis, but we found they could sometimes be like up to 2 days before certain IERs are created, which is very odd. So, one of the SQL queries, what we did is we're essentially bringing IERs as a synchronized data extension into Marketing Cloud so we can check, does it exist in Salesforce before we try to update it. So that's how we got around that.
Thank you, Kara, for answering that one. All right. We have one more here from Evan. All right. If someone has a custom list, let's say a list of like 300 people they want to email, how do you handle getting that custom list in CRM and then in a data extension with a contact ID? This is a magic grail, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a whole nother presentation. We do have a custom uploader tool that does, like deduping. So we have, yeah, so many people have their lists like outside of the org, and we have built a customization that lets them upload those records directly to a campaign. And that would also potentially create a contact based on, matching logic that we have in place.
Sounds like something we're going to bring you back to share another presentation about. Who votes yes? Let's see some confetti. That's great. All right, we have, this looks like our last one. This is from Carrie. Since this link is personalized to the individual, does that change or confound the click or open rate for the email as more individuals check what has been sent or engagement data such as Google Analytics?
I love this question as well. So we do in the link to the like code snippets, one thing we did was we put some code AMP script in our email templates to exclude view as a web page links. So, if an advisor is clicking on the link, it will not count. That's helpful for this, but it's also really helpful because a lot of our units are actually like taking the view as a web page link from maybe an email they were sent themselves or they sent themselves, and they're posting it on their website as kind of like a data visibility official record. And so we also didn't want those clicks to be artificially captured. So if you want to put that in place, we do have a code snippet for that in the link.
Thank you so much. All right, let's see. We have one more there. They're squeezing these in. We have one more here from David. Are the sum of opened clicked stats you had in the report on slide 13 and 14 drawn purely from the IER out of the box stats, or are you pulling these stats into somewhere else on the campaign, et cetera?
So those slides, I don't want to touch trying to go back to it and kicking me out, but essentially, if I'm remembering correctly, like the open and click rates, like when you see that on a campaign report or on an event report, that's because the numbers are drawn from the IERs, where those IERs have like that specific campaign lookup or that specific event lookup or any other object. So it's a little bit of both.
Thank you, Cara. All right, I think that rounds up our Q&A. I think we got to all of them. Thank you so much, everyone, and for sharing great feedback to Cara. Meredith, shared you are awesome, and so I definitely agree. This is a great presentation, and definitely the confetti is definitely voting that up. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next session.
Thank you. Bye.